Oy Zayin. Friedrich Rebbe is verbringing Chav Kislev Tavris Tzadik Gimel, and now he's making reference to what he told over the night earlier. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, T'moil Siparti. Yesterday I told over that the 3 hours the Alter Rebbe was in the apartment of the Misnagid that pained him more than the entire arrest. And he didn't want to leave Kripost, which is the Petrovali fortress, when they notified him that he's able to leave. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, the Gansein Atfisa Bechlal, the entire arrest was with the approval and the agreement of the Alter Rebbe. Not only the Alter Rebbe, says the Friedrich Rebbe, every single tzaddik, he's in complete control of what transpires, not only Baruchnis, but also in regards to his physical realm and in regards to his Gashmis. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, Torah is the Baldeya of the Welt. Torah is the one that decides what happens in the world. And all the Nyanei HaOlam, they're all Meshuba to Torah. They're enslaved to the decisions of Torah. And B'meila, what's supposed to happen with a tzaddik, it only happens with his agreement, his approval. And so it's understood that the tfisa, the entire arrest, was with the haskam of the Alter Rebbe. Now the Friedrich Rebbe is going to prove it, so to speak. And he says, when the Rebbe wollte nicht maskim gewesen, had the Alter Rebbe not agreed, they would never have captured him. And the raya, the proof for this is that they're traveling their journey to Petersburg. It was Friday, and the black wagon stopped. It stayed in its place. It didn't help the 4 horses that they harnessed to it to schlep this wagon and try to move it. It didn't budge from the place because the Rebbe didn't want. So now the Friedrich Rebbe gets into the details of that incident and says, it was 6 hours before Hadlakas Neiris, when the Rebbe did not want to travel onward. The black wagon stopped and did not budge from its spot. The general and his officers, his police, they understood that this is not a regular thing. And what all of a sudden that it broke the axles of the wagon, the wood that connected the black wagon to the horses. The Friedrich Rebbe on the bottom writes in a footnote that the Alter Rebbe said it's a play off the piyut of the Arizal, Azamer B'Shvachin, and over there it says Tzvachin af Achsen betelun u'shvissen. The Alter Rebbe made reference that Tzvachin af Achsen, that even the oxen, which in Yiddish is the axles of the wagon, they, so to speak, cried out that betelun u'shvissen, we're stopping, we're null, we're not on Metzias, and we're not moving. Anyways, back inside. When they fixed the oxen, the falta fair, a horse fell. They brought new horses, and they couldn't move the wagon from its place. They then asked Alter Rebbe he should at least give permission to be able to travel over to a close village to be there for Shabbos. The Rebbe didn't want. Then they asked he should give at least reshus that they should travel to the side of the field, to the side by the field, side of the road, not to be in the middle. This the Alter Rebbe agreed, and that's where they were. That's where they spent Shabbos Kodesh. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, this was 2-3 yarst, which is a measurement of space, near the city of Saliba Rodnia, which is near the city of Neville. And now the Friedrich Rebbe adds a tzir of a chassid. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, a chassid of Michal der Alter of Neville. He was a mashpia, he was a Michal Blinner, he was a mashpia in Temple Tmimim. He walked on foot to the Tzemach Tzedek. He was a mechunach by Reb Peretz Chaim, which is the father of the Radatz, as we learned yesterday in the previous 3 Oisias. And he had his parnasa from building ovens, and while he would prepare these ovens, he would say Chassidus. Mashpia, as we said in the other altar, he was a mashpia in Temple Tmimim. So he would tell over that he nachnu Chassidim, that knew and would be able to point to the place where the Alter Rebbe rested and where the Alter Rebbe stayed that Shabbos. He himself went to see the place, and he said, from both sides of the road, it's loaded with trees. Virebi, type of broken, old, dried out trees. And in the place where the Alter Rebbe, they brought his wagon to be there for Shabbos, which was near a very big tree, a beraza tree, which is a beautiful tree with a lot of branches and fresh. And when the Chassid of Michal would talk about this, he would first of all explain and illustrate this with tremendous detail, all the details of the place. And he had such enthusiasm and such chayis, and he was in such a elated spirit of Yiras Shamayim, says the Friedrich Rebbe, and emotion, overcome with emotion of midas trumiyos, of giving, character that from just thinking about the tree, this aroused him so much from Midas Tavis that it was as if he says it's the way people today are in this Eider when they learn an Inyan in Chassidus affiliated with Avodas Hashem. Now, Ois Ches, the Friedrich Rebbe is now going to stop for a moment and dwell upon the way a story is told and the impact of Chassidus Shemaisa and Bechlal being around Chassidim that tell over even seemingly sideline details how this impacts not only the person's life in Avodas Hashem but his entire family. He says the Friedrich Rebbe, the following is the Maimer HaMosker. He says it's not negiah to the story that we just told over, but you should know it's relevant to the essence of what Chassidim are, and it's negiah to you, to each and every one of us, to his wife, to his children. May they be well and healthy. The Friedrich Rebbe says it's known. There's a Gemara in Yerushalmi that says Hakol Tolei B'Leiv. Everything is dependent on the heart, and the heart is dependent on the pocket, so to speak, on money. And Friedrich Rebbe is going to explain this. The Reishas Avodah by Chassidus Younger Light, the beginning, the doorstep of Avodah by Chassidus Younger Light, and parenthetically, Younger Light means young folk, but Chassidim Bechlal stayed young. This refers to all Chassidim. Was Zechrai ben Arum Elter Chassidim, to rub shoulders, so to speak, rub between Elter Chassidim. We see tangibly, says the Friedrich Rebbe, b'muchash, that when a person wants to become warm, you want to warm up a house, you have to heat up the oven. And what this means is you have to add heat, not just to the temperature of the room, but it seems like the Friedrich Rebbe is referring to the fact that you have to heat the source, shaloi be'er higher, the oven. And in the same regard, you want Varmkeit and Torah mitzvahs, that's not where it starts. It starts by much smaller details, having a geschmack and being around Chassidim. As by Yidden zolveren achoyim de Kedusha, in order that by Yidden there should be a warmth and a heat of Kedusha, a chayis and a mitzvah, a geschmack and learning, you have to heat the oven, you have to arouse your heart. And this Eiros Alev happens only through Shimusha Shel Chassidim and Anshe Maisa, by serving, so to speak, and being around Chassidim and Anshe Maisa. This is Pshat of the first clause of the statement of the Gemara, at least the Chassidish Pshat, that Hakol Tolei B'Leiv. But what does the heart depend on? It depends on money, on hard cash, as the Friedrich Rebbe is going to explain. It depends on Kviyas Torah. He says, the Leiv Tolei B'Kis, so heart, Darfman Habnep is Mezuman Eich. To the heart also needs cash. It depends on it. Mezuman Eschayr, it has to have ready material. It needs to have a shmira ma'ula, so to speak, a strong guard over kviyas itim, over maintaining established and set in consistent times of learning every single day. The hour or that period of time that a person learns, that's negeya. For you and your entire household, only your siblings and your children, etc. Now, says the Friedrich Rebbe, there are people that they do business on credit. They don't have actual value, inherent value. Heart is faran, says, by such people they have a heart, as tzit, and they have this yearning, and they come to Chassidus Farbrengen, and they get aroused. But the Mezuman felt they don't have the hard cash to depend on, and the real schayra, the available valuables, which is the kviyas itim l'Torah. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, everyone needs to know, and although everyone knows, that a Yiddish good heart, which is al pi Torah bechlal, and a Chassidish heart, which is befrat, is a glikval. It's a fountain of luck. It's a fountain of oisher, of prosperity, and of glicklichkeit. Sai in family life, that's the greatest bracha, as known, that the reina Yiddish Torah family life is one of the greatest luck and the greatest oisher a person can have in a person's life. And this takes place only through kviyas itim l'Torah, whether it's b'chavrusa or with a bechlal, a good gathering, tzavsa tova. Now, says the Friedrich Rebbe, I'm talking about this parenthetically, I'm talking about this casually derech agav, in a maimer hamusker, so to speak, in parentheses. However, the Inyan has a tremendous value in the life of Beis Yisrael, and therefore this deserves stopping and discussing this specifically. And this is the Toiva, this is for the benefit of Bnei Yisrael, Bnois Yisrael, and their children, may they live. Ois Tes. Now the video goes back to this traveling, this journey that Alter Rebbe made to Peterburg from when they arrested him in the black wagon. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, there's Sipur from the Nasil of Peterburg. The story of the Alter Rebbe's traveling to Peterburg gives us a tangible sign about what we were discussing, that every single thing that happens, and with a tzaddik b'chlal, and a tzaddik and a nasi b'Yisrael, a leader of Am Yisrael b'frat, that's only with his approval. And the Rebbe didn't want to travel. The wagon stopped, and it stopped exactly where and when the Rebbe wanted. He was in full control. When the wagon stopped, it was in the time. It says, had the wagon stopped in the time of Hadlakas Neiros, so that wouldn't be a chiddush. Even when the story came about, this is something that would have happened even without the Rebbe, so to speak, thinking about it or noticing it or being cognizant of. Like the story that happened with the Gvir, Rabbi Yeshua Tzeitlus, which was from the Misnagdim of Shklov, that he wanted to test Alter Rebbe with wine that a guy touched, Stam Yenam. And this didn't pan out. Alter Rebbe was saved. And then he told Alter Rebbe, in regards to a person like, or a tzaddik like you, it says in Mishlei that Lo Yu'un L'Tzaddik Kol Avon, that to a tzaddik no bad will befall. This, says again the Friedrich Rebbe, is not a wonder. But to say that the wagon stopped 10:30 in the morning and didn't budge from its place, that's a pella nifla of Moivsei Hashem b'muchash, that's seen in a very tangible way, like all the nisim gluing that happened for Am Yisrael that are undisputed. This was a hiddur, I'm just telling you, this was a hiddur of the Alter Rebbe not to work after Chatzos in Russia. At that point, it was around that time of the day. Al-Kain says, Asher Al-Kain, for this reason, says the Friedrich Rebbe, everyone understands clearly that such a man de Amar, like the Alter Rebbe, that has a real say in how the world runs, and a Baldeya over Bechlal physicality, that's who the Alter Rebbe was. And he had Bekoyach not to go to this imprisonment, and he didn't need a deal Bechlal even for an hour not. And he went to Tvisa. Why did he go to this arrest? Because for a kavana pnimis in avoda. This is what he had to go through, and he understood for a deeper reason. Avram Avinu, says the Alter Rebbe, says the Friedrich Rebbe, he opened the channel of Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem to sanctify the Eibishter's name. And the Alter Rebbe, he opened the Tziner Mesiras Nefesh for personal service of the Eibishter, for Teres Chassidus. As the Friedrich Rebbe just mentioned, that he actually went on Mesiras Nefesh and went to prison, despite him being able to avoid the whole thing, for avoida, for siba and avoida. And from all this, one can understand that the general union of Tfisa was not more than halbasha beratzin, that he, so to speak, placed himself there and clothed himself in those circumstances, not to use supernatural powers that are higher than the inyan. He says the Friedrich Rebbe, it would require much more explanation to explain it in detail, and from that one would understand even like a Efes Kotze, the smallest, minute amount, at least, about the Rebbe's Ava Pnimis and Atzmis to Yidden Bechlal. Because, as he mentioned, the Alter Rebbe went on Mesiras Nefesh to open the tziner of Mesiras Nefesh for Avodas Hashem, in order that we should be able to serve the Eibishter in a Pnimius and dedicate ourselves. That's why the Alter Rebbe placed himself in that circumstance. So he says, if I would have explained this more, this would be even clearer. That this is what he wanted, that all Yidden should start living with the highest pnimi in Torah and Avodah and through the path of Chassidus. And Chassidus, this is for Yidden Bechlal and for Chassidim Befrat. This Ava, the Rebbe implanted in all the following Rebbes after him, and that they explained this concept derech agav. So he says to explain this inyan just derech agav is impossible. And this inyan requires a bracha to be kovei bracha b'fnei atzma. It needs its own blessing, so to speak, its own inyan, and barichus habir that's necessary. So the Friedrich Rebbe, I'm just mentioning it in passing, in short, so Chassidim know that they're not alone, they're not elend. because when there's such a ava atzma, such an inherent love and a deep personal love that the Alter Rebbe had, which is nitzchis, it's eternal for all generations, transmitted to the next Rebbes till Mashiach. We'll be zoichet to see B'tchias HaMesim with all the Rabbeim face to face, and obviously it's going to be with a countenance of smiling, a shining face, and panim masbiris that are inviting, as the Mesiras Nefesh Rabbi saying that the Alter Rebbe granted them. Ois Yud, in the Farbrengen of Chav Kislev Tzadik Gimel, Friedrich Rebbe says, Nach der Kurze Akdama, having given you the short introduction in the previous Oisius about the lack of Tfisas Makam, how little it was relevant in the life of the Alter Rebbe, the entire incarceration, and all the pains that came with, so to speak, his oppressing him, says the Friedrich Rebbe, and now I'll tell you a story, says the Friedrich Rebbe. And this story is going to give us to understand the greatness of the Alter Rebbe Bechlal. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, was in winter Tafrei Samach Vav, and my father, the Rebbe Rashab, and myself were on the yahrzeit of the Alter Rebbe on Chav Dal Tevis. We were in Moskva. We needed a minyan to daven mincha, and it seems like the Rebbe Rashab wanted to say Kaddish for the Alter Rebbe. Winter is a very short day, Efrat in Russia, and as known, in Moskva in those times you needed a davar nastin. It means you needed a specific permit to be able to live in Moscow, and every Yid had to guard himself strong when he was walking in the street. No one should notice that he's a Yid, lest this bring upon him problems and inspections, etc., which could lead into bigger problems. So it hence was very hard to gather all the entire minyan, and for the specific time that the Rebbe Rashab wanted. The Rebbe Rashab then said, says the Friedrich Rebbe, in the name of his father, had the people known the greatness of saying Amen, specifically of this, from this Kaddish that I will be saying for the Alter Rebbe, how much bracha atzlacha this gives in all the aspects of the neshama, the nefesh ruach neshama chaya yechida, and translating into brachas beruchnius and begashmius and banei chayim mezayna, and not just for them but for all generations. He says the Rebbe Rashab to his son, the Friedrich Rebbe, there would be many minyanim. Afterwards, people started gathering one by one to form the minyan. The Rebbe Rashab, which was very careful to daven tefillah bismana, and it's opportune time, and it's a lot of time, and specifically mincha. So the Rebbe Rashab, he already davened right away mincha. He wanted there should be a minyan that they daven minyan b'mincha, and he'll say the kadeshim. Says there, and hence the Rebbe Rashab already davened mincha. The mashlim to the minyan, that means the 10th of the minyan, was hachasid rebaruch shalom hakoyin rudner, specific chasid. When they daven mincha, the Rebbe Rashab said the following in regards to the kadeshim. He says there are kadeshim that they are there to benefit the nifter, the one that's deceased, that it's being said in his honor. There are kadeshim that they are a benefit to the one saying it. It's a bracha for him. And yes, there's another type of kaddish that for the one saying the kaddish, it's like a ladder that he's climbing. And for the one listening, those responding amen, it's, so to speak, a channel and a pipe drawing down hashpah. Says the Rebbe Rashab, obviously he's referring to this type of kaddish being the third type. And he says, the first 4 oisius of kaddish are Rosh Tevis Yosher, Yiskadla Yiskadla Shmei Rabba. Yosher means straight. And therefore the Rebbe Rashab concluded, and he said, the Amshacha that's drawn down through this Kaddish should be in a very straight, direct, and in a swift way, and it should be in a way of revealed good. Now says the Friedrich Rebbe, and he's expanding, you should know that a Talmud, on the day of his Rebbe's passing, he cleaves to the Rebbe with his Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chaya Yechida, all levels of his Neshama, to his Rebbe's levels of his neshama. It's a tremendous connection. And now the Friedrich Rebbe goes back to describing the Alter Rebbe in his imprisonment. Aish Pashut, even a simple Yid that's sitting Chas v'Shalom in Tfisa when he's incarcerated, Le'aleinu, so he becomes more refined. Allah has come v'kama one referring to Rabbeinu Agadol, the Alter Rebbe, on his level, what this elevated him to. So even though, and how much more so that he was incarcerated for revealing Pnimis HaTorah for such a refined and Idla Heilige Zach. And he had Mesiras Nefesh Bepoil, as known that his daughter, the daughter of the Alter Rebbe, she passed on due to this imprisonment, as the Friedrich Rebbe is going to say onward in the next ois. After such Mesiras Nefesh, and when he was in jail, he had such dveikus with Ein Sof Baruch Hu, for fulfilling Mesiras Nefesh for the Ratzon Ha'alin of the Eibishter, and for being there with his Rebbes, the Mezritcher Magen and the Baal Shem Tov. Now one can understand how, so to speak, how much it moved him, the being in prison, and the lack thereof. That means the lack of how much this was relevant, and how much this pained him. And you can understand a little bit of ash'ara. You can estimate the inyan eliki that he accomplished by sitting in Petrovalsky Kripos and being over there together with the Mezritcher Magid, listening to the Baal Shem Tov, and as much and how little the Tsar, and hence you can understand how painful it was, the 3 hours, when compared to the delight of being imprisoned for being the Mesiras Nefesh for the Gilui of Pnimis HaTorah. As explained earlier in the Farbrengen of Yotas Kislev, the Friedrich Rebbe there said that once he was released from jail, the kitrug was off, and therefore the tsar of being for no, so to speak, for not for Mesiras Nefesh there pained him. Now says the Friedrich Rebbe, we'll understand the vart that we have received from Rabbi P. Rebbe, that those 3 hours the Alter Rebbe sat in the apartment of the Masnagid was pain that was greater than the entire imprisonment. Now it's understandable, well understood. Ois Yud Aleph. The Friedrich Rebbe is now going to give the background for the Mesiras Nefesh of the Alter Rebbe's daughter, the mother of the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Tzemach Leah, for the spreading of Chassidus and that it shouldn't go down. So, says the Friedrich Rebbe, in Meshach from the Finif throughout the duration of the 5 years, between Tavkuf Memches and Tavkuf Nun, a footnote says L'chorah it should be till Tavkuf Nun Beis, that's 5 years, the congregation of Chassidim became stronger. Hein Bekamos, Pashat in the quantity, and the multitudes that joined the movement of Chassidus, and Hein Be'echos also in quality, the quality of those that joined in Big Yerushalayim, Labdanim, etc. Which means that what this tells you is that the Talmidim of the Alter Rebbe, of the 3 Chadarim, they dispersed in various places, and they disseminated Chassidus over there. As known, the Alter Rebbe himself was very organized, and he was mamish like a general, the way he led. And Be'inyan the Anhaga, the way he led was with the biggest oiros. It was an emotional movement and a revolution. He had an orderly seder and it planned out. And it says the Friedrich Rebbe, as I've written in the past a long letter, that much of it is noted down by me. What I heard about this in the way the Alter Rebbe worked, that throughout these 5 years, Chassidim became many, and not only that, there were many Balei Deir Rechava, many with tremendous intellect, very, very powerful minds that joined. And the Menagdim, those against, they started seeing how Chassidus is now, the Adas Chassidim is now a complete flock. They're mamish a whole congregation. They're not a few. They're not just a few gathering of a few people. And they started noticing that the Talmidim of the Alter Rebbe, they travel to disseminate and to publicize Teres Baal Shem Tov, that they realize that these are also Gdolei Yisrael and Torah and Yerushalayim, and every city where they reached, they brought many nefashos, many yidden to Chassidus. So this reawakened by the guy. They again try to awaken by the Gaon of Vilna to revive the battle against Chassidus. As known, that initially he didn't want to listen to them. However, those that are the quarrel type, they insisted on having a machlokes, and they had to surround him with mirma, with trickery, and they started telling him culminate facts that were obviously not true, and they made the malshinus, about the Darkei Chassidus, and how they go about life, and about their bittul Torah in specific. In that time, that we're referring to is Tavkuf from Nal, Tavkuf from Beis, at the end of those 5 years. Toida Lakel, says the Friedrich Rebbe, the rose of Chassidus flourished, and there was an Ayin Hara from the one that has placed his evil eye, and this means referring to the Satan, the same Satan that placed his Ayin Hara in the Beis Rishon and Beis Sheni, Rahman al-Islan, and it was a tremendous Kitrug L'mayla. In that summer, the Alter Rebbe sent Rabbi Chassid Rabbi Yaakov Smilyaner, which was a shadar. He gathered money for supporting Koil Chabad in Eretz Yisrael, and Mechlal Beis Harav. He sent him to Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl, tremendous tzaddik, the Talmidei Baal Shem Tov, Talmidei Amagid. He also is the famous Machaber of Sefer Ma'orinayim. He sent him with a pan for himself, for the Alter Rebbe himself, and for the general well-being of Chassidus and its spread. And he called his daughter, the Rabbanos Tzkanos Maras Dvora Leah, and told her, the mother of the Tzemach Tzedek, and told her about his intention, that when he called her name, it means he told her what he meant with that there's many Dvar Leahs that existed, and he told her the whole inyan of how important it is, the espashas of the Torah of his teachers, and the Matzav Toiv. He started to just telling her, recounting how special the Torah is spreading, and it's being niskabel, it's being received with tremendous success. Aval gira be'ena de sitna, so to speak, an arrow in the eye of the Satan, and that he revealed to her that it has been decreed upon him, Elamayla, that this should take his life. And in Rechenzich, he says he's considering that the Hamshachas in this world will also be able to continue, and he'll be able to continue this revolution from the higher Olamais. This poiled avoida, and not only he says this will poil avoida. However, this is not an hag of tikkun. It's not the proper way of in Kalim running Chassidus. His daughter didn't respond anything to what her father told her, and she left. However, after a while, she came and said, "I've them turned it maskim zayin." He's now said to the Alter Rebbe, "You can agree, b'shum oifenat." And she called some select people, it means Angezana between Chassidim and Balei Soid of the Alter Rebbe students, and she told them b'ktsara what the Alter Rebbe had told her, and she said before them, the Tata b'shum finished, sie nehmt auf sich abbaitim. The father, my father for sure not. That means I don't allow they should take him, and I'm taking upon myself to replace him, in order that the Tata soll durchführen, he should be able to victoriously complete what his grandfathers and his elders, his great-grandfathers, referring to the Baal Shem Tov, and their kavanas, their intentions, and their ritzainis, that is essentially the Eibishter's supernal will, the Ratzon Elyon. Now, this was common, that Chassidim donated years of their life, or were ready to swap. Obviously, this is not something the Alter Rebbe asked for, and being that she went and she accepted it in front of Chassidim, and they agreed to it, the Koyach Beis Din as known, so there was no way back. Margel bepume the Bnei Rabbeinu Agadol. It was common expression between the sons of the Alter Rebbe to call the Rav Magid as the Zayda and the Baal Shem Tov as the Elter Zayda. Now, says the Friedrich Rebbe Yusewitz Beis, Amolke adem Tatens are verbringen. The verbringens of my father of old, every vart was a pearl. Margolius Teva, a beautiful diamond. With time, we get closer and closer to understand an ancient vart, says the Friedrich Rebbe, and it becomes totally, it becomes clear in a whole new fashion, and it becomes, it takes on a new light. Every vart that I now understand, says the Friedrich Rebbe, varent, it warms and makes good after Hartzen. And when you think deeply into it, you feel that you're not when this vart accompanies you, you're not alone. He says, in Gashmias we see that a person that has a few pearls, which is good schayr, good material, aberdas is fart einzel pearl. This is usually a person that has a few, so it's just it's limited. But the few pearls that he owns, if he brings them onto one strand and with an order, all of a sudden it brings out a whole new beauty. And there's really nothing new within the pearls, but when it puts together, formulates this mosaic, this beautiful picture, it's a whole new level of beauty. And it's balaich that shines the entire surroundings. It brings out color of wherever it is, and it creates a new aver zach. And the Friedrich Rebbe is pointing out that the tatas of Farbrengen now, it like a tapestry, all fills in for each other. And this is an introduction to Ois Yud Gimel, where the Friedrich Rebbe is going to describe onward in the story of Mr. Snapper's Rebbe's Verleia.